In September 2015, a paleoanthropologist named Lee Berger had a problem. He had found something extraordinary inside a cave system in South Africa called Rising Star. But the passage to reach it was 18 centimeters wide. None of his researchers could fit. He put out a call on social media. He needed scientists small enough to squeeze through a crack that scrapes skin off shoulders, past a vertical climb called the Dragon's Back, into a chamber no full-sized adult could reach. 6 women made it through. What they found down there rearranged everything we thought we knew about death. 15 bodies. A species they named Homo naledi. Brain the size of an orange. No tools near them. No predator marks on the bones. No flood deposits. No natural explanation for how 15 bodies ended up in a chamber that hard to reach. Unless someone carried them there, through the dark, one at a time. Here is what we had assumed. You need a big brain to care about your dead. Language, probably. Religion, maybe. Some inner world, complex enough to look at a body and feel it is still a person. Homo naledi had none of that. 300,000 years ago, before our species existed, before cave paintings, before fire was fully controlled, before anyone had the vocabulary to say the word dead. And they still couldn't leave a body on the ground. In 2023, Berger's team published new findings. Possible engravings scratched into the cave walls. Evidence of controlled fire deep inside. The scientific community pushed back hard. That brain was too small for symbolic behavior. But 15 bodies were still in the cave, and nobody has explained how else they got there. Every animal on Earth leaves its dead where they fall. Lions walk away. Elephants linger at the bones, touch them with their trunks, then move on. Wolves don't come back. A chimpanzee will carry her dead infant for days, then set it down and never return. We come back. We have always come back. In 1960, Ralph Selecki of Columbia University was excavating a cave in northern Iraq called Shanidar. He found a Neanderthal grave. Old man, bad arm, withered from birth. Damage to the left eye socket. Could barely use one side of his body. He could not have hunted. Could not have survived alone. You'd expect his people to leave him behind. That's the efficient move. That's what survival of the fittest is supposed to mean. They fed him for years instead. Then they buried him. But Selecki found something else. He sent soil samples to a palynologist in Paris named Arlette Leroy-Gourhan. The results came back loaded with pollen. Yarrow, groundsel, grape hyacinth, hollyhock. All flowering plants. All local. All in season. Someone had laid flowers on a Neanderthal grave 60,000 years ago. We think we invented that at funerals. We didn't even invent funerals. The scientific community fought it for decades. Some argued the pollen was carried by burrowing bees. Contamination. Coincidence. Then they kept finding more. In 1908, in La Chapelle-aux-Saintes, France, 3 men digging in a cave found a Neanderthal skeleton laid into a rectangular pit. Knees bent, head positioned. Tools and animal bones placed around the body. 2 of them were brothers, both priests. Amédée and Jean Buissonny. Their colleague was Louis Bardon. They documented everything. For decades, other scientists dismissed it. Natural depression in the rock. An accident. Nothing worth studying. Then in 2014, William Rendu of the French National Center for Scientific Research went back to the exact same cave. Re-excavated the exact same dirt with techniques Buissonny never had. The pit was intentional. The burial was real. A century of dismissal, overturned in the same hole. Here is what makes burial genuinely strange. It has no survival benefit. None. A body left in the open decomposes faster. returns nutrients to the soil quicker. Burial costs time, costs calories, attracts no food, protects nothing. Every other species on Earth figured out that walking away is the smart move. Millions of years of evolution say, leave the body, free up resources, keep moving. We looked at all of that and decided to dig. But here's the thing nobody expects. We didn't all dig the same way. Sky burial in Tibet. They leave the body on a mountaintop for vultures. River burial in India. Tree burial in parts of Australia. Cremation across Europe, Asia, everywhere. The Zoroastrians built towers specifically so the dead would never touch the earth. The method changes every 1,000 miles. The impulse hasn't changed in 300,000 years. So the question is not why we bury. The question is why we can't stop doing something about the body. Paul Pettit, an archaeologist at Durham University, has spent his career on this. He wrote the first comprehensive survey of Paleolithic mortuary activity in the English language. His argument is simple, and it has nothing to do with the dead. A death tears a hole in the group. The person who knew where the good water was. The woman holding two families together. The hunter who could track in the dark. Gone. The group doesn't just lose a person. It loses a piece of its own operating system. Pettit thinks burial is the technology they built to survive that. You stop. You gather. You put the body somewhere together. Everyone faces the same absence at the same time. You'd think that would slow a group down, make them weaker. The species that stops to grieve should lose to the species that keeps moving. We didn't lose. We're the only ones left. Pettit's book asks the question directly. When did the dead become symbols? His answer is that burial requires you to hold two contradictory ideas in your head at the same time. This person is gone. This person is still here. That is either the beginning of religion or the beginning of grief. Probably both. Probably always been the same thing. The archaeological record backs him up. Nearly every ancient burial site on Earth shares something. The body is positioned, not thrown, not dropped. Placed. Sometimes facing east. Sometimes curled like a sleeping child. Sometimes with the hands folded. Someone folded them. At Bonn Oberkassel in Germany, a grave from 14,000 years ago. Two humans. Between them, a puppy. You'd assume the dog was food. Protein stored for the afterlife, maybe. A sacrifice. The puppy had canine distemper. Someone had nursed it for weeks. It died anyway. In 2018, Luc Janssens, a veterinarian and researcher at Leiden University, published a reanalysis of the bones. No cut marks. No evidence of butchering. The distemper alone would have made this animal useless for any practical purpose. Not food. Not sacrifice. Just a dog someone loved. 14,000 years ago, we were already burying our pets. In 2022, archaeologists in Borneo announced a burial from 31,000 years ago. A young person, left leg amputated below the knee. Clean cut, healed bone. Years of survival after the surgery. Tim Maloney of Griffith University called it the oldest known surgical amputation. But the burial is the part that stays. They didn't leave the person when they lost the leg. They didn't leave the body when they lost the person. Both decisions live in the same patch of dirt. The oldest known cemetery is a site called Tafaralt in Morocco, about 15,000 years old. Bodies in rows. Different graves marked with different colored ochre. Louise Humphrey, a researcher in human origins at the Natural History Museum in London, has been excavating there since 2004. She found the same rituals repeated across generations. Grandchildren burying their dead the way their grandparents had. Someone taught them how. The first thing humans ever deliberately passed down, generation to generation. Before farming, before writing, before money, before language had a word for tradition, was what to do when someone you love stops breathing. In 1917, Freud wrote an essay called Mourning and Melancholia. He made a distinction. Mourning is when you slowly release the person who is gone. Melancholia is when you can't. He thought the physical act of putting a body somewhere final is what lets mourning begin. Without it, the brain keeps the door open, keeps listening for the footstep that doesn't come. Every culture on Earth does some version of this. Every culture that has ever existed. There is not a single civilization in the archaeological record that simply left its dead where they fell. Not one. We did this before we could write, before we could count. Before we had a word for death, we had a response to it. 300,000 years of the same gesture. A body in the ground and someone standing over it, unwilling to leave.